Welcome to episode 2 of the Dark Side podcast. It's been about 4 months since the debut of this advanced podcast, and in the meantime we've been racing to get our website updated for the 2014 registration season. So we apologize for the long delay between video productions. But we're now ready to start delivering the high quality video that you're used to seeing from the Minnesota State Referee Committee again. Our topic this month is going to be on prevention of player versus player mass confrontation. Not dealing with it after it happens, that's an important topic too, but our focus is going to be on prevention. Managing mass confrontation is a significant and key feature of being able to referee effectively in higher level games, but we think any referee would just as soon prefer to avoid these circumstances if at all possible. We're going to start with a rather unfortunate incident from the Major League Soccer playoffs that occurred recently between the Montreal Impact and the Houston Dynamo. Let's have a look.
Sarkody. He's made the right back position his own. And that'll probably do it. Pure frustration from Andres Romero. Devayo gets in there. And this is where Houston's got to be very careful. They don't want to lose anybody for the New York Red Bulls semifinals.
And you talk, this for me right here is classless from Montreal.
Devayo's getting run out of there.
Poor sports, Devayo. There you go. He should be sent off now. Poor sports, Montreal. Sore losers.
Dominic Kinnear knows that anything rash here would cost him a player for the New York Red Bulls. That's the main concern here.
Romero should be disciplined. Devayo should be disciplined. This is a joke.
Well, Devayo's gone, so is Andres Romero, so they are disciplined. So Montreal will be down to 8 players now. Marco Devayo pulled himself mentally out of this game in the second half, and he's been so outstanding throughout the year. It's such a shame because he has come to MLS, he has taken it seriously, and tonight he's just a ball of frustration here and deserves the red card that he gets.
Shocking behavior from Montreal. Embarrassing. Sarkody smart. The foul simple. What are you doing? What are you doing?
Was that kick from Romero that triggered it all?
What are you doing? Here you go. Here's Devayo. Keep an eye on Devayo's right hand. Not just there. It happens again. There you go. He's scratching him, too.
It's an absolute Montreal meltdown here tonight.
Prevention of mass confrontation involves a great deal of awareness and the capability to connect the dots. In this situation, we have to recognize the game situation and the impact of it. Houston is leading this playoff game 3-0 in its waning seconds. A Houston attacker has possession of the ball in the attacking corner of the field and is doing what many coaches will call, quote, walking it to the corner. This is a delay tactic. The ball is in play, time is running off the clock, and the trailing team, without possession and far from its own attacking goal, is prevented from mounting any kind of possible threat to score. For starters, we have to recognize this is a potential flashpoint. The defender here wants to win the ball back and launch a counterattack, but in this situation, even one goal for Montreal will likely be useless. Therefore, not only is Houston killing the game, they're killing off Montreal's season. The defender, number 15, Romero, comes from behind the attacker, number 8, Sarkody, and charges him. Clearly a foul, and not a particularly harsh one. Our referee, Mark Geiger, calls the foul as the assistant referee pops the flag to indicate the infraction. At this point, we need to have our hackles up for a potential flashpoint. Player on the ground, opposing player standing over him. Add in the game and the season situation, this is ripe for problems. Sure enough, the ball winds up between Sarkody's legs, and Romero, his frustration boiling over, proceeds to kick at the ball and kicks it into the back of Sarkody. While the degree of contact is not severe and Sarkody is not injured by the incident, the intent is quite clear. This is violent conduct, a straight red card. The assistant referee responds in perfect fashion. Within 2 seconds, he is between Sarkody and Romero to keep the situation from escalating. Geiger arrives shortly thereafter. However, it is after Geiger arrives that the situation explodes into a mass confrontation. Numerous players from both teams become involved. Geiger and his assistant do an excellent job of backing out of the confrontation and allowing the players to work it out on their own. And in doing so, they recognize the need to caution Corey Ashe of Houston and give a second red card in this situation to Montreal's Marco Davao for violent conduct when he rakes his hand across Ashe's neck. Here's what you have to ask yourself. Why did this escalate to mass confrontation when the assistant responded so quickly and when Geiger was there before any other player? Notice that when Geiger arrives, with the AR's focus on backing Sarkody off, Geiger walks past Romero and goes to help the assistant referee. This was the fatal mistake. The assistant referee has Sarkody. With 2 players involved, we're still just in game disrepute. Geiger should have suspected Sarkody was responding to something Romero did, but we'll give Geiger the benefit of the doubt and assume that he did not see the violent conduct. Therefore, Romero becomes the flashpoint of the subsequent mass confrontation. Unfortunately, Geiger ignores him and moves to help calm Sarkody. Left unmonitored and unprotected, Romero is then confronted by number 27 for Houston, Boniek Garcia. Boniek is the third man in. According to the directive on mass confrontation, the third man in should be cautioned because number 3 is the one who blows the game disrepute situation into a mass confrontation. But Boniek gets away with this because both Geiger and his AR are preoccupied with Sarkody unnecessarily. Sarkody is the victim. Granted, he's upset, but it doesn't take 2 referees to hold back a victim. Somebody has to deal with the perpetrator. This situation could have been contained with one simple move by Geiger. Grab Romero, move him away from the corner, and then shield him from any Houston players who want to confront him. The guy who just committed violent conduct is the flashpoint. As referees, we need to recognize the flashpoint, the instigator, and quickly remove that person from the equation. Firemen will tell anybody that it takes 3 things to start a fire: kindling, oxygen, and heat, or some sort of spark. In this situation, the violent conduct was the kindling, the oxygen was Sarkody's angry response, which spurred his teammates to come to his defense. The spark was Boniek's ability to confront Romero. Romero set the kindling, Sarkody's response, the oxygen, was inevitable and recognized and responded to by the assistant. But Geiger failed to eliminate the potential spark, and as a result, the situation degenerated quickly. Unrelated to this topic, but we'll mention it here, in the subsequent mass confrontation, we can note Houston coach Dominic Kinnear come down the line, leaving his technical area to help pull his players out of the confrontation. Kinnear certainly helped settle this situation, but he also left his technical area and waded into a confrontation. Major League Soccer was not happy about this, and as a result, he was suspended from the touchline for Houston's next playoff game, even though he was simply helping. This should be a stark reminder of how important it is for coaches to remain in their technical areas, especially in incidents of mass confrontation. The remaining clips in our podcast utilize NCAA footage, but please understand that the principles we're discussing in this podcast apply to any soccer match regardless of the governance. Our second example of this comes from an NCAA Division III college match between the College of St. Scholastica out of Duluth, Minnesota, and the University of Wisconsin-Superior. As with the Major League Soccer playoff game, it's important to understand the season and game situation. These 2 teams are traditionally pretty strong. Scholastica often wins its conference and earns an NCAA tournament berth each year. Superior plays in a tougher conference, but typically wins at least 2/3 of its games. The fact that Scholastica usually makes the playoffs and Superior does not creates a bit of a big brother, little brother relationship. Add in the fact that in the 2 years prior to this, Superior has won this match both years, and you can add a bit more kindling, remembering the fire analogy. These are the only two men's Division III teams in the Duluth Superior area, which means this is what in Europe is known as a derby. Two teams in close proximity, there tends to be a lot of animosity between the teams and sometimes the fan bases. Think Manchester United versus Manchester City in the Premier League, the Classico between Real Madrid and Barcelona, or Inter Milan versus AC Milan in Italy. Minnesota soccer's most intense men's college derby would probably be St. John's versus St. Thomas, though I'm sure many other colleges would probably argue for their own. But this Duluth Superior derby is pretty darn intense, and thus requires its officiating crew to enter the game with a high level of awareness. Scholastica is in blue for this clip. Superior is in white. The game is 1-1 with about a minute left in the second overtime, 109 minutes into the match. And then this happens.
Goes big. Oh, jinx.
It's Superior now.
Oh, things are getting ugly here. Well, we're down to 16 seconds left, and tempers have flared.
This free kick should be interesting.
Yeah, I didn't see. I saw the original foul, and Jenkins did take him down, but it wasn't vicious. But then I don't know if he said something or did something, but that's when things really got ugly.
Yeah.
So I don't know what. Like I said, I don't know if he did something again to him, or if he just said something while he was down, but. Certainly got intense there, including we got a card there to Jenkins.
Yep.
Maybe the only card that's given. Just surprising. There was a lot of pushing and shoving, but a lot of pushing and shoving, a lot of stuff going on back and forth. I'm surprised. Oh, it looks like the keeper's going to get himself a card, maybe.
The keeper sprinted in.
Yeah, he came in late, and he kind of.
We have a bad foul by number 9 of Scholastica on Superior number 10. This is a tactical foul. It's unsporting. Pick your poison. It's a cautionable offense. Superior number 10 drops to the ground in pain, holding his leg. To add heat to the situation, number 9 then yells at number 10, apparently thinking he is faking an injury in order to get number 9 in trouble. This situation has a lot in common with the Major League Soccer clip, though in this case the victim of the foul was actually injured. Generally speaking, we recommend that it's better for the referee to place the safety and well-being of the injured player above all else, and in this situation the referee attempts to do this. But, as with Geiger's clip, this one has all of the aforementioned kindling, the foul adds a burst of oxygen, and all we need now is a spark to set it on fire. The referee needs to recognize the potential for fire and keep that ignition from happening. Upon arriving at the site, the referee walks past number 9 to address the injured player. More importantly, he leaves his ignition source behind him, out of sight. Not that allowing number 9 to wander off is a good idea at all anyway, but the referee digs a deeper hole for himself by not turning his body to put the mass of players in front of him, and in doing so he loses track of the spark that we said is so important to monitor. We're going to revisit this later. In the meantime, number 9 wanders away, possibly with the belief that if he, quote, disappears, the referee will then be unable to identify him later and not issue a caution. But this is also the fatal mistake by the referee, just like what happened to Geiger. When number 9 walks away, he is confronted by Superior's number 15. Meanwhile, Scholastica's number 3 also walks by the fallen player and yells at him. The situation quickly degenerates into full mass confrontation. Unlike the MLS incident, the referees here failed to back out and monitor, which easily could have led to greater unnoticed misconduct than actually happened to occur. In the end, number 9 gets a caution, as does the Superior goalkeeper who left his penalty area, arrived initially to serve as a peacemaker, but then was provoked and began acting in an unsporting manner. Unfortunately, neither the third man in, number 15, nor any Scholastica players who added to the intensity of this confrontation received cards, likely because the crew is so engaged in trying to break up every little argument they were unable to identify any of the instigators. Again, the management of the mass confrontation is another topic entirely. We want to focus on the goal of avoiding mass confrontation if possible. As with the MLS situation, the referee should have immediately identified, separated, and protected the perpetrator from retribution. We appreciate the concern the referee showed for the injured player, but in doing so, he allowed number 9 to wander off and become a target for confrontation. This led to players from one team running to defend their teammates, and pretty soon we had a mess. The take-home point of both of these confrontations is that even when there is an injury, we must remain focused on the individual guilty of misconduct and show that we will deal with him. This helps us head off the need for the fouled player's teammates to believe that they need to seek retribution themselves. Players will believe that they need to enforce disreputable behavior unless the referee shows that he or she will take care of it. So show that you will take care of it, and this will head off the need to take care of mass confrontation later. Having shown 2 examples of game disrepute gone awry into mass confrontation, let's look at a few examples of volatile situations where the flashpoint was recognized and dealt with in one way or another, resulting in diffusing a match temperature. In the first such example, we have St. Scholastica's men's team again, in white, this time playing the University of Minnesota Morris in red. Not a local derby, but these 2 teams traditionally compete for the conference title and thus a berth in the NCAA tournament, so a game between these teams will have some bite. Think something more like Manchester United versus Arsenal. This is early in the match with the score 1-0 to Scholastica. This situation starts with a rather benign looking foul, but it starts to get a bit itchy when the fouled player decides to thrash around on the ground, kicking out at the player who fouled him. The defender says something to the foul victim, who then jumps up and gives the defender a 2-handed shove to the back. Remember, one of our potential clues for problems is always going to be a player standing over a player on the ground, so we have a recognizable flashpoint here. The referee does respond, and you can see him lay on his whistle once the push occurs to remind everybody that he's close by, and this minimizes the chances of any more stupidity. A bit quicker presence by recognizing that player on the ground with a player over him situation might have helped prevent escalation here. One thing you will notice about this confrontation versus the first 2 is that the referee recognizes who the ignition source is, the fouled Morris player, and hangs with him. He does not leave him immediately to break up the burgeoning confrontation between his teammate and several St. Scholastica players. We see him standing right next to the source of the problem while simply monitoring the other players for misconduct. The assistant referee on that side comes off his line to gain better proximity, and the ignition player, the victim of the foul, is released only when we can see that he is no longer in the middle of the conflict. He is players and is no longer the cause of this persistent problem. At this point, the referee releases him, for the moment, and utilizes space on the field to finish breaking up the confrontation. Once all of the players are separated and have calmed down, the referee returns to the cause of the problem and lectures the Morris player about his actions, giving him a nice, quiet but poignant, "What the do you think you're doing?" Yes, there's a number of other people in this confrontation who don't exactly settle things down, people running from distance to stick their nose in. But the focus of the referee's control remains on the cause, and he allows the peacemakers to separate those burgeoning problems without adding to the match temperature unnecessarily with aggressive body language. That is precisely why this never truly spins out of control. Our second example of success is a bit older, featuring a college men's game between Luther College of Iowa and St. Olaf. These were both very good teams in this season, and they play in the same region, so the result of this game could easily factor into seeding in the national tournament. Let's have a look. An aerial challenge leads to a St. Olaf player in white knocked over on the ground. He tries to pop up off the ground, but his feet catch the Luther player. With the ball still in the area, a second Luther player comes over and in challenging for the ball, falls over and onto the prone St. Olaf player, who probably thinks that's done on purpose because he seemed to kick at the other Luther player. Displeased, the St. Olaf player gets to his knees and throws a clear punch at the Luther player. This is a flashpoint, and the centerpiece is St. Olaf's number 21, who threw the punch. Number 3 for Luther, the player who fell on number 21, certainly is involved as well. Notice there are 7 other players in the area after our referee blows the whistle, but none of them take on an aggressive posture or become what we would call the third man in. This is because the referee has, quote, smelled a problem and gotten to the incident site quickly. But our referee also remains 100% focused on the 2 problem players and allows neither of them to wander off, nor does he allow any other players to confront either of them. And remember in the St. Scholastica Superior game where the referee left the trouble spot outside of his field of vision? In this clip, we see the referee walk through the hot spot, then turn his back to the touchline to keep everybody, ignition source, and all potential third men in his primary field of view. To use a great double negative, nobody is getting away with nothing here. We had a punch thrown, and yet by the end of this incident, there's a bunch of resigned individuals convinced that the referee is going to deal with it. Game disrepute contained. Incidentally, as I'm sure many of you will be wondering, the referee actually did not see the punch as the ball moved away. He only knew there was something happening in his peripheral vision and managed to get in quickly to make sure it did not escalate. As a result, St. Olaf number 21 was not actually red carded on this play. Our State Director of Assessment, Bob Peterson, noted that the referee was, in Bob's words, an idiot for not seeing the punch. But then again, Bob's allowed to say that because he's the referee in the clip. The focus of this Dark Side podcast has been the prevention of escalation from game disrepute to mass confrontation. The key feature in all of the clips shown has been to remain focused on the players responsible for the worst behavior and separating them so that retaliation does not become an issue. At the next level of officiating, it remains key to provide a sense of justice for the players, and we do this by holding those who act unsporting or violent first and foremost responsible for their actions.